fourth grade. We have a poetry lesson for you today, so let's get started. I have a link so you can print out a form. If you can't, then you can kind of just duplicate it on a piece of paper, okay? So let's get started. All right, guys, so I printed off my documents, and I'm going to show you the materials that you're going to need for this lesson. I have colored pencils. You can use markers, anything that has different colors, and scissors. I have this poem, I Met the Dragon Face to Face. And then we have this one. This template has little boxes on the sides. And then the last two poems. So let's go ahead and do this one. And let me see. Okay, so this one, what you're going to do is you're going to glue this side down on your paper. And you're going to fold the ends in. Folded mine in. So I have voice of the speaker, and then I have what that is, the line, what that is, the stanza, and the rhyme scheme, okay? So when we open it up, we shouldn't have anything on there. And this part is what you're going to glue down on your piece of paper if you want to, okay? Let me grab, then you're going to grab this one. And this one you're actually going to cut and fit inside of your template like this. So I've cut my poem and I'm going to get a glue stick. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention you do need a glue stick. We're going to glue this and then just glue it inside of our template. Right, so I have mine folded in. If I open it, I have my poem inside. And it just kind of flaps open, the flaps open to see it. So first we have the voice of the speaker, and that is the speaker in the poem, which could be the poet or a character the poem has created. And the character can be human, it can be a made up mystical being, it could be an animal, anything that the poem made, okay? That is the voice of the speaker. Line is a single line from left to right, okay? So if I look at my poem, I have the title, I Met a Dragon Face to Face by Jack Prelutsky. I met a dragon face to face. That's one line. There's two lines, okay? So that's what it means by line. And then a stanza. And a stanza is a group of lines separated by space. So when we're writing a regular paper, we indent. And we make spaces for our next paragraph. So in poetry, we have them also separated. And we call that a stanza, okay? So this is a group, one stanza, and this is two stanzas. So this poem has two stanzas. And then the last thing we have is rhyme scheme, which is the pattern of the rhyme within the poem, okay? And we're going to read the poem and we're going to find the pattern of this poem, okay? So the first question that I want you to think about when I read this poem is how it made you feel, okay? I Met a Dragon Face to Face by Jack Prelutsky. I met a dragon face to face the year when I was 10. I took a trip to outer space. I braved a pirate's den. I wrestled with a wicked troll and fought a great white shark. I trailed a rabbit down a hole. I hunted for a snark. I stowed aboard a submarine. I opened magic doors. I traveled in a time machine and searched for dinosaurs. I climbed atop a giant's head. I found a pot of gold. I did all this in books I read when I was 10 years old. All right, so go ahead and right now you can pause the video and kind of think about what you feel when I read that poem. Right, and I also want you to think about what you think that this poem is about. What do you think the poem is about? You can go ahead and pause your video if you want to have a little bit of more time to think about it, okay? All right, so I'm going to look for the speaker, and the speaker in the poem could be the poet itself, or it could be a character that the poet created. So I'm going to read this and look for clues to see who is the speaker for this poem. And just right away, even visually, we can see all of these eyes. So we can circle those or just color them in. Also here, we see a lot of eyes. And eye right there. And eye. And we have a lot of them, right? So if we look, he met a dragon, he took a trip, braved the pirate's den, wrestled, trailed a rabbit down a hole, hunted for a snark. And he keeps saying, I did all this. And then he says, I did all this in books I read when I was 10 years old. So the author of this poem is probably Jack Prelutsky when he was 10 years old, right? All right, so let's get a different color. And for the line, I'm just gonna use yellow. So I can just visually see what I'm doing. I could do this too. So I know the speaker is blue, and when I open it up, I can see all of that. Tells me who the speaker is. Here we have a line, right? And a line is a single line, or it could be, well, in this poem specifically, it's just the line. So there's one line, 2 lines, 3 lines, okay? All of that is a line. Sometimes they have a period. Sometimes they have a comma. Sometimes they don't have anything like this one, okay? So it's just a line. So what I can do with my yellow is draw a line, and you can do that on every single one. I have went ahead, and as you can see, I drew a line on every line of the poem, okay? And so sometimes a line is a sentence, sometimes it's several words, sometimes it's a single word, okay? And the author does that to create a pause or a certain rhythm when we're reading it out loud, okay? Also when we're looking at it, they do that also for a visual sometimes, okay? So sometimes it's for our eyes, sometimes it's for our ears. So let's grab a different color. So I've used these, so I'm just gonna get a different color. And we're going to go to the stanza. And so for the stanza, I'm gonna use green. I can just do that so I can see it. And a stanza is a group of lines separated by the space. And so when we look even visually here, we can see that these groups of lines are together, and then there's a space, and then these groups. So this would be my first stanza, and this is my second stanza. So I can go ahead and circle these or put like a square with my green. Let me go ahead and do that. You can see that I put green, and I can visually see the big difference, right? I have one group here and I have another group there, and that separation just kind of shows me that this is one stanza and this is 2 stanzas, okay? So this poem, I Met a Dragon Face to Face, has 2 stanzas. And then we can grab a different color, and we're going to find the rhyme scheme. All right, and now we're going to find the pattern. So I have a different color. And usually in a poem, we're gonna have rhyming words. Not all poems rhyme, but most of them, especially the ones meant for students or younger people, do rhyme. And usually where we find that rhyme is at the end, okay? So that usually tells us what line rhymes with what line. So let's look at the end of this line, and I know that my line is that yellow line. So we have the word face and the word 10. Okay, face and 10. That doesn't rhyme, right? So we're gonna give it, I'm gonna underline this word, and 10 I'm going to circle. So we know that it's different, okay? Then I go to the next one. Space. Face, 10, space. Face and space rhyme, right? So since we underlined that one, I'm gonna underline that. And then we have den. Space and den doesn't rhyme. Does den rhyme with 10? Yes. So because we circled this one, we can circle that one. And then we look at troll. Okay, face, troll, 10, troll, space, troll, den, troll. None of those rhyme, right? So this will be something different. So we can do like a triangle. That way we know that it's different than these. And then we have white. Face, 10, troll, and white. None of those rhyme. So I'm going to do a rectangle on this one. Okay. And then we have the word shark. Okay, shark. So shark, face, 10, space, den, troll, white, shark. What does shark rhyme with? Troll and shark don't rhyme. So we're gonna leave that one. So I looked at the poem, and when I printed this actually should be here. So it would be, shark would be a rectangle, because this actually should have been printed here, and it didn't. And it's probably because when I printed it, I set it so that it wouldn't take that much space, because I knew we were going to fold it in. So shark is actually here, okay? And fought a great white shark, okay? So because shark doesn't rhyme with troll or den or space, we are going to do that shape that's different, okay? And then we look at the next line, whole, and whole, shark, troll. Troll rhymes with whole, right? So we can put a triangle on that one. And then we have the word snark, whole, that doesn't rhyme. Snark, shark, yes. So we're going to do the same shape, okay? So if I look at this, I could have done also letters, okay, to represent the rhyme. And mostly when you see a poem, they do use letters. So we know that this is the same, right? And we always start with the letter A because the A is the first letter. So we're gonna label this A, and we see another line that's also the same. So all of that is an A. So we should have two A's, and I'm gonna look to see, I don't have any more that are the same. And then the next letter in the alphabet is the letter B. So because this is a different shape or a different rhyme, we would say that's a B. And then we are going to look for the same shape, which is right there. So far we have AB, AB. And then we have troll. And we see that because we did a different shape, it's a different letter, okay? So it would be the letter C. And then we have shark. So we should have A, B, C. This is different, right? So because it's different, we're gonna label it D. Okay. And then we have a triangle, which I have here, which is the letter C. So we can label that a C. And then the last one here is the same shape, which is D. So we should have AB, C, D, C, D. And that is the rhyme pattern, okay? So if you can do what I did was I just kind of labeled it different, because that way visually I can see this is a circle and this is kind of ovaled into or a circle. So then it's easier for me to see it visually, but you could also just do the letters from the very beginning. And the nice thing about a poem and a stanza is we have two stanzas. If we were to look at the rhyming pattern here, it would actually be the same as this one. So it would be A, B, C, D, C, D. So it would be the same as up here. So that's pretty nice. And this one is a very typical, very common rhyme scheme. But that is just the lesson for today. So this is just parts of a poem. If you couldn't print this out, you can just kind of recreate it on a piece of paper, and you can use markers or crayons to kind of label yours like this. Real quick, pop quiz. What are the 4 parts of a poem? Tell me the 4 parts of a poem without looking at your template. Were you able to remember what the 4 parts of a poem are? If not, that's okay. We have an easy way for you to remember. And so I just got the first letter of every section. So if you look at your paper, we have voice, line, stanza, and rhyme and rhythm, okay? So you can think of a way to remember this. I usually just think of Violet loves seeing rabbits, okay? And that way I remember those 4 parts. So if I have to identify it, I remember V. I know that it would be voice, line, stanza, and rhyme, okay? Viola loves seeing rabbits, okay? That's an S. My handwriting is not the best, but that's an S, okay? All right, so let me read the poem to you again, and we're going to talk about it a little more in depth. So I'm just going to fold these back so I can see the poem, okay? So I Met a Dragon Face to Face by Jack Prelutsky. I met a dragon face to face the year when I was 10. I took a trip to outer space. I braved a pirate's den. I wrestled with a wicked troll and fought a great white shark. I trailed a rabbit down a hole. I hunted for a snark. I stowed aboard a submarine. I opened magic doors. I traveled in a time machine and searched for dinosaurs. I climbed atop a giant's head. I found a pot of gold. I did all this in books I read when I was 10 years old. So how did that poem make you feel? What did you think about when you were reading that poem or when you were listening to it? You can go ahead and pause the video so you can think about it. Let me see if I can bring I couldn't bring the board over, but that's okay. We will just look at the poem that you have in front of you, and we're going to think about what we felt, okay? I guess I will start. I felt probably a sense of adventure because of all the things that he did or listed that he did. And I think it's a very good poem for everybody to read, but especially us. Most of us are self-isolating and we're not getting out. And so this kind of reminds us of everything we could be doing in books, right? Because he said when I was 10 years old, and most of you are around that age. So a sense of adventure, which is really nice, right? And so that kind of brings me to the question of what is a poem, because I see a lot of different things that people write and they say that it's a poem. There's a lot of debates when you get older about what is a poem and if certain poems should qualify to be a poem. So what is a poem? You can go ahead and pause the video and think about that for a second. What do you think a poem is? All right. So most of you, if we were in class, would say that a poem is probably a group of lines that rhyme, right? I get those answers all the time. Is a poem that rhymes. Sometimes poems don't have to rhyme. So if it doesn't have to rhyme, then what is a poem? What do you think it is? Some other people might say, well, if it doesn't have to rhyme, it's just a group of lines like we saw here. So I did it yellow. It's just a group of lines. And somebody can say, like I said before, sometimes it's a line, sometimes it's a word, okay? Sometimes you'll read poems that are just one word in the whole line. So it's also not a sentence or groups of words, okay? That is also not a poem. It's included in the poem. Rhyming is included in the poem. But what if you don't have those two things? Do you still have a poem? It's a good question, right? So what the scholars decided that what a poem really is any writing that has a purpose, okay? A good poem is something that either one, makes you feel a certain way, or two, has a call for action, okay? So it's wanting you to do something, okay? And that's why you have to read the poem to see what is this poem trying to do? Is it trying to get me to do something, or is it just wanting to make me feel a certain way, okay? So I'm going to read it again, and I want you to think about the purpose of this particular poem, and I'm going to switch my camera so you can see. So this would be your second reading, okay? And we are going to focus on trying to figure out if the poem is just wanting me to do something, or is it just wanting to make me feel a certain way, okay? I met a dragon face to face the year when I was 10. I took a trip to outer space. I braved a pirate's den. I wrestled with a wicked troll and fought a great white shark. I trailed a rabbit down a hole. I hunted for a snark. And a snark is a made-believe creature, okay? I stowed aboard a submarine. I opened magic doors. I traveled in a time machine and searched for dinosaurs. I climbed atop a giant's head. I found a pot of gold. I did all this in books I read when I was 10 years old. All right, so here's the 4 parts of a poem that we're going to keep in mind while we're looking at the red wheelbarrow, okay? The red wheelbarrow, as you can see, I have 1 stanza, that's just 2 lines, right? 1 line, 2 lines. As I can see, this is just a single word. That's a single word. And then I have another stanza and another stanza. So how many stanzas does the red wheelbarrow have? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you said 4, you are correct, okay? This is known as the best poem, and a lot of people disagree, but I will show you kind of why, and mostly it's because of these 4 elements, okay? The Red Wheelbarrow by William Carlos Williams. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. What do you think that poem is about? So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chicken. All right, so that poem is a little bit difficult, right? But that's why I wanted to share it to you, because I feel like you will be exposed to it, and maybe you'll remember it when you're older and you'll have to kind of think about this poem again. But the red wheelbarrow. So let me give you the backdrop story of this poem, okay? So William Carlos Williams is a doctor. And way back, doctors used to go to a person's house, and then they would do kind of the office visit at a person's home, and then they would leave. That was very common, long time ago, okay? So this particular day was a horrible weather. They had storms. It was really rainy. The roads were very hard to drive, and a little girl was sick, okay? And her family called Dr. William Carlos Williams and said, can you please come? Our daughter is very sick. She had a high fever. She's been sick for several days, and we think she's going to die. And so he drives up there. It takes him a long time. The roads are bad. But he finally gets to see this little girl. And she had a high fever, so he gives her medicine. And he is going to wait a little bit in her house to make sure that her fever kind of goes down. Or if it spikes, then he's going to have to do more things for her, okay? So he is overwhelmed because this is a little girl and he doesn't want her to die, and he feels overwhelmed, and he asks to sit down somewhere else so he can wait to see if the medicine is going to help this little girl. And he goes and sits down next to this big window, okay? And so he wrote that as he sat next to that window and he looked out the window, this is what he saw. And he saw the red wheelbarrow, okay? So he saw this. He saw the red wheelbarrow glazed by the rain, right? Because it was raining and storming, beside the white chickens, okay? So there must have been like a chicken coop. And that's what he saw at the window. And what he thought was, wow, this little girl's life depends on this moment right now, right? She can live or she can die, but so much depends on this moment. And that's why he wrote the wheelbarrow, the red wheelbarrow, to kind of show us that so much depends upon this time and your gift, right? And so right now, during the coronavirus, and where all of us are kind of not going to school, I thought it would be also a good poem to remember, because so much depends upon us finding what our gift is. For example, right now, there's a lot of people helping. Every time that we have something bad happen, you always have people that are helping, people that are coming up with ideas to help their neighbors or help their community. So one of the things that I've seen a lot of people doing is sewing face masks. And it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but hospitals are accepting them now. And so I'm trying to think of imagining, I have a friend that's a nurse. She does have protected gear, but their hospital is now accepting donations. And so she said, I'm not really scared of catching it, but I'm scared of giving it to my family. So just her having some kind of protection over her face helps her feel safer. And that's a good thing, right? So much depends upon some woman sewing a face mask and giving it to her so she feels safer. So she feels like she's safer, and that affects her and her family, right? And then we have like food pantries that are providing meals for everybody in the community. Schools are providing food for students, and so much depends upon those services, right? Because kids get to eat, and food is expensive, and so it's so nice to have the ability to help people or to get help during this time. And I know you guys are young, but so much depends upon you also finding what you're good at and your gift and using it to make this world a better place, okay? So I know kids that are kind of a little bit older because my son is 13, so most of the kids I know are his age. But some of them are like crocheting things like baby Yodas, and they're going to mail those out just to make somebody's day to feel better. They're making cards. Some people that know how to draw are making cards. And I'm thinking if somebody's really sad and then they get this card, it really makes a difference, right? So much depends upon you finding your gift and using it to make this world a better place. So that is what really that poem is about. And that's kind of a hard poem. So let me turn my camera and show you specific things. So the first thing is the voice, right? So let me pull this here so you see it. So the voice, okay, the red wheelbarrow. A lot of poems when you get older are gonna sound like someone is mid-conversation, and so they're not directly talking to you, but they're just kind of talking, kind of projecting their ideas. And so this is kind of the same thing, right? So much depends, and he's just saying that, but he's not saying I or you or us. He's just talking. So the person that is the voice would be the poet, okay? So it would be William Carlos Williams. That would be the voice, right? So how many lines does this poem have? You can go ahead and pause the video. All right? So if we look at a line, so much depends, that's one line. And then upon, even though it's one word, is actually a line. So we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 lines. How many stanzas does this have? Because stanzas is our third part of a poem. So how many stanzas does this have? All right, so if we look at it, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4 stanzas. And then the rhyme. Okay, the rhyme scheme or the pattern of the rhyming words. So we have depend upon, if I look at just the word depends, upon, wheel, barrel, rain, water, white, and chickens, nothing rhymes with depends. Upon, the same thing. There's no rhyme scheme or no pattern, right? And that is why I said not every poem has that, and that doesn't mean that it's not a poem. These are just parts of a poem, okay? So if we look at the rhyme scheme, we don't have a rhyme scheme, but we do have a rhythm, okay? Or the flow of the poem, and so that would be counted as the rhyme scheme. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater besides the white chickens. And the flow of that is kind of feels like rain, or kind of going like the wheelbarrow, right? So much depends goes up upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater. See how it kind of goes like up. If I had a circle, like, you know, a circle, it would kind of go like that, right? And kind of like the red wheelbarrow. So that would be the flow or the rhythm of that poem. And the third poem is a little bit easier. I did get it off of the Poetry Foundation. And what I want you to do is go ahead and look at this poem and identify these 4 parts of this poem. And then I will link the questions for this poem, and then you can go ahead and answer those. Thank you, guys.